Welcome to the Microsoft Security Insights Podcast with your hosts, Franklin Grimberg and Edward Walton, where we discuss Microsoft 365 security and Azure security news and products. Recorded May 19th, 2021, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Good afternoon, good evening, Franklin.
Good afternoon, Edward.
How are you?
Good. We have an exciting lineup tonight, but I have something to talk about real fast.
Well, hold on. You know what? You go ahead. Nothing from the peanut gallery today. I have nothing today. I'm tired. And
all right. Yeah. Go ahead. I went to an SC 400 virtual instructor led training last week. 2-day, the SC 400, and I have to say, first of all, I have to ask you the question: is compliance security?
It's part security, but more process.
Okay,
like it's process.
So, what happened was, so the training started out, and the Microsoft employee from Worldwide Learning that's responsible for the SC 400 class was actually also in the class taking it just to see how the content's going and so on. And right away, the instructor goes into the fact that one of the labs is out of date because Microsoft had just updated the product 2 weeks ago and the labs were out of date. And this guy just drilled that for 4 out of the 16 hours of the course, right? So, and it just drove me nuts the way that he was drilling that home to the students, beating up on the labs and the courseware for it, and so on. So, why I bring this up is that everybody's going out to take the tests. You have to realize that there's 3 moving parts here, okay? The courseware, the labs, the exam questions, and then the products, the portals, the Sentinel portal, the compliance portal, and so on. Those are 3 moving parts, and the product team's not going to wait for the courseware, labs, and the exam questions to be updated, nor do the customers want to wait for that. That's impossible. Now, the mistake that the instructor made, other than beating up on it for 4 hours, was the fact that when you're going in to take those exams, those questions, since I actually wrote questions for SC 400, I can tell you those questions were written not in the last 2 weeks, right? So if you go in and you're taking these and you're doing the labs and there's actually out of date labs, it's important for you to understand the old way, the old content, and the new way of doing things, okay? Because that product might be updated, but most likely those exam questions and labs are not at that point in time. When you are taking the test and you run into a question that's out of date, please leave feedback because all of that stuff is actually reviewed by the exam reviewers, and they'll say, oh, look, this is out of date, so please pay it forward when you're taking the exam. So just realize that so the instructor should have, instead of beating up on the fact that the courseware was not updated in the last 2 weeks, the instructor should have pointed out, listen, probably even though the labs are out of date, the exam questions are probably also out of date, and these things are not going to be constantly in sync because the products, the portals are actually being updated so frequently that there's no way to keep this stuff up to date. So just remember that if you are taking these classes or you see an update to the portal, just remember that you might be being tested on the older way of doing things. And so that was the thing that's been driving me crazy after going to that class because I think that the instructor did not, did a disservice to the students by not pointing that out to them.
Well, this ties back to something else. So where you and Rod and everybody else is bragging that they passed the SC200, I'm feeling like a doofus. I said, I couldn't fail that exam, right? So I go back to my email. I got an email way before you guys that said, hey, congratulations, you, and then the email was just blank. And I think I told you that, Frank. I said, "Oh, and Frank, well, I haven't got mine." So Rod posted on his blog that he passed, and then you did, and I'm like, "Wait a minute." So I log in and go look at it, and it's not in my transcript. Hmm. So I took your advice, Frank, and I logged into View, and it's not even there. So what happened? I showed up, let the proctor tell it. I went to an actual testing place. Let them tell it I was 15 minutes late. Well, I was like, I stood in the lobby for 5 minutes before someone came and got me. So I logged in just before this podcast, Frank. It's not there. Like I never took the exam. Not a failure, not anything. So now I gotta, well, not like I'm gonna pay for it, but I gotta go take this thing again. So I tried to explain to the young lady. I said, "Hey, I'm the only testing person here, and even if I am late, the rule is if the exam takes 2 hours and I show up with an hour before, you either close or the testing window is done. So suppose my testing time was 2 o'clock, and it's a 2 hour exam, so I have the four. If I show up at 3, I only get an hour." She said, "That's no longer the rule. You pass 15 minutes late." She said, "It's a lot of paperwork." I remember her talking about it, but she promised me she would do it. She said, "I'll fill it out. I'll do it. It's a little headache on our side," and she didn't do it. But I have to assume she didn't do it. But she's going to get a look in my, when I go back there. I hope she's still there. Like, hey.
Yeah, but you should still call in and open up a case there and say, where is it at? I mean, because you actually took the test.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go in there. It's like, you said you was going to fill the paperwork out and you didn't.
Pay it forward, Edward. You got to go in there and
And it cost me my job. They fired me. And,
any excuse they can think of. I got to tell you, I got to tell you, I pushed off writing some of the M365 Defender content because I knew that the unified portal was going to be coming out, right? And remember how we kept complaining about that, saying it's not out yet, it's not out yet. And so I pushed it off as long as I could, but then I couldn't, the courseware had to go in, and 1 week after the courseware was published, here's the unified portal for everyone. Drove me nuts.
One last thing about that, so we can get to our esteemed guest, is that the unified portal's out. Once again, they're showing this preview stuff. I can't find where the MDI integration is in it. It's not in my lab. I cannot find it. I've seen it in screenshots when they've done road mapping. I cannot see it. And so it's not complete yet. Right? I can get the MCAS via, I can get to MDE, I can get the 360 MDO from the unified portal. And the crazy part about it, I saw an alert in MDI if you go to the portal proper. It didn't manifest in the unified portal, and I'm not sure that it manifested in Sentinel. I got to go check because I did a little test and I passed credentials in clear text. It caught it, but it didn't tell anybody else about it. It didn't tell Sentinel about it, and it didn't tell the unified portal. And yes, inside the data connector, when you go in there, it asks, did you integrate MDI into MCAS? And if it did, the alerts are supposed to go from MDI to MCAS and then MCAS to the unified portal. It didn't do it. And it may be because my lab is kludgy, right? So I'm gonna put that to the list of stuff for me to go look at. The list is getting about that thick now, right? And we'll go that. So I found that odd. It didn't show up. So we'll see how that goes.
We'll add it to your list in Discord. So we now have we have the Edward to-do list in Discord, the Brody to-do list in Discord.
You know what we need to do?
Ask Rod Trent in Discord.
So nobody can so nobody can fudge, their task list. Rod, we're gonna put all of our task lists on a blockchain ledger. So you're gonna have to when you do it, you're gonna have to absolutely go do it, right? But hey, good to see you, Rod. As always, the $6 million and 27-cent man count inflation, right? You gotta skew it for inflation.
Only 27 cents, huh? Oh, there we go.
Good. Isn't that awesome?
That is. He has a Surface Duo. Wow.
That is so fantastic.
Oh, then you have a baby too. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Technology, the baby, the whole thing.
Yeah, it all comes together. Yep.
Way to package that together. That was slick.
Without further ado, to our listeners, supporters, guests, hecklers, naysayers, and biggest fans, I'd like to I'd like to introduce our guest for this week. This gentleman has forgotten more about, I won't even say Sentinel. I just like the overall uh, analytics, data, data-driven metrics, data sets. I call him Mr. Minority Report, right? If you ever just see him grabbing stuff and doing this stuff and be able to piece stuff together, actually, I think I call him the Majority Report, right? And so, pretty good. So, Ren, I won't be able to give you just due. I'll let you do your own introduction, who you are, what you do, what's your passion. I mean, we could make a complete show about your experience, but I like for you to show what's really got the security industry a buzz right now. I'm looking at LinkedIn blow up from your contribution to Sentinel via the workbook that you created. So I'll go ahead and hand the floor over to you and shut my mouth and tell everybody what's going on.
Well, hey, thanks for having me, guys. This is exciting and fun, and I appreciate this forum. This is kind of great. So my name is Rin Ewer. Wow, I'm longtime security practitioner, and I love helping protect customers and helping protect our world. I think that's just been a passion of mine, long time coming. Starting with Linux and moving to Windows, and then combining all of those things together has just been wonderful. But I got kind of into the whole security thing around 2008. Where Sim World, more or less, security side of Sim World in 2008, and really kind of got bit by that bug and how data analytics, drives the industry and what that might look like, as we continue to move forward. And when Sentinel was coming out, um, I really wanted to be a part of that. So I was a part of some of the incubation to Cosmos DB and some of the analytics across log analytics and Custo query language early on at Microsoft. I remember when we were even told, "Hey, we're going to have a SIM, or we're going to develop a SIM," and it was kind of a laughing joke. We all just kind of laughed and we're like, "We're not in that business. That's yeah, no, okay." But we had a lot of folks come and ask to participate and to give knowledge, just to share, right? And so it was some things we're working on, like machine learning, and some things we're working on different capabilities. At the end of the day, though, really my passion, I guess, in the content that we want to talk about tonight has been around SOC operations and security operations in general. And Sentinel is this fantastic product. It's got so many capabilities. It continues to, excuse me, to evolve. Edward and I, we're on a team together, and don't let this man fool you. I mean, he's just as knowledgeable, just as encourageable as I am, and I love working with you, Edward. It's been a joy being on this team and seeing what we can do as we partner with our product group and moving the product in a direction that I feel is changing the industry, changing the way that customers are thinking about SIM all up and the operations around SIM. But this latest workbook, the team we've put together, this took 4 months to develop. Some of which came from a lot of operations and capabilities and things that I helped develop within Xbox Live when I was standing up our SOC for Xbox and our Microsoft gaming solution. Some of this came from the merger when they merged us all in with Windows Devices Org and said, "Hey, we love what you did for Xbox and the gaming world. Come do it for the larger Windows Devices Org," when Satya tipped everything over horizontally and said, "Everyone's going to play, nice together across these verticals." And that was a great learning opportunity. And our charter went from, server-side services to a very large portfolio of devices, identities, and just different services and applications and things that were happening within that world. That's also when the inception of the Cyber Defense Operations Center got kicked off. We partnered with Brian Casper on that, and our team was instrumental in helping to stand up that hub and spoke model, where we were then able to sit in as a technical duty officer and really kind of help to solidify the processes around how we were thinking about that hub and spoke model, what that looked like as, you had the SOC for the organization that was feeding into the CDOC, and what that escalation process looked like, and how we were doing triage and incident response, how we were thinking about shift scheduling, crisis callouts, war rooms, all of these different capabilities. And that's really kind of where, all of that knowledge and all of that experience, I think over the years, I've seen Sentinel develop over these last couple of years. It was very apparent that we needed to be able to give to the community this type of framework that customers can snap to the type of operations they're looking for around the feature sets within this product to go dive, deeper and build actionable items for their SOC analysts and the type of things that they want to see from that. So that's really kind of my passion. I love Legos. You can see kind of in the back. You can't see above my shelves or over, but a huge Lego. I just like to build things. I'm kind of a builder. I'm more of that quiet, just let me go do it. And Edward can attest, I don't talk a lot on our team calls. I'm an observer and I absorb, I take it in, I hear where people are struggling, and I go and solve things. It's like, let's go fix that. Let's go and make that better for you. But that's a little bit about me, my passion, what I do on the team, and what we're here to talk about tonight.
And so, great intro and great, talking about your history and where you come from, which is still so much you could talk about. I had a natural affinity and with working with Ren because I did a lot of work on the partner side. So I'd have always interested in how you could take these products and do two things: operationalize them and then monetize them, right? You could sell the product, but can you make the product something that you can then manage, right? And that's everyone's struggling with that. Even MSSPs who are in the business of doing that still struggle with that, right? Am I providing value to the customer other than just generating a ticket, right? I don't know why this is so hard. It seems that there is no middle ground. Some partners / MSSPs do it very well, and some of them just flop. I can't really find a middle of the road person, right? And I don't know if that's because of lack of internal processes, true understanding of SOC operations, but that's one of Ren's strong point. I can take this, I can operationalize it, I can automate it, and I can scale it, right? And I'm starting to see that more because I'm starting to get into these discussions about CI/CD, right? And I got to come up to speed on that, where people want to manage the Sentinel environment in a software development, manner, and also doing stuff in sprints, like Scrum and Agile and Waterfall. They're sprinting, right? We got to get this done, right? So, which is one of the great reasons, and that we wanted you on, also at the nudging of Rod, right? Mr. Trent has a way of twisting your arm behind your back. We would have had you on anyway, right? We want to make Rod feel good, like he's in charge. So,
I love it.
What we like to do is give you, presenter and show us the magic.
Yeah, we can certainly do that.
I think Franklin has already made you the host / presenter.
All right.
Excuse us for using Zoom. Everybody's drinking the Microsoft Kool-Aid here, but Teams acts funny sometimes and loves to embarrass us when we're trying to do this stuff.
All right. So does that look good on your side?
Oh, yeah.
Just going to kind of close things a little bit so that it's a little bit more clear. Okay. So I guess the first challenge that I set out to solve was, how do we build a knowledge base for our customers in the product that can be leveraged inside Sentinel? They don't have to go anywhere else. What does that look like? And when I first kind of thought about what the challenges might be around this, I was leaning more on the Jupyter Notebook side. That's kind of where I was thinking about placing some of this and kind of building it out. But then a really good friend of mine, Clive Watson, who I work with, he's over on the UK side, said, hey, have you considered maybe using a workbook and kind of building out an infrastructure that they can navigate and then update and use that infrastructure within the workbook to keep each of the different areas up to date per their business, right? So it's customizable per customer. I thought, that's fantastic. What a great idea. So I started playing around with what that might look like in a workbook. And the more I played around with it, the more I realized that Azure Workbooks has some really cool functionality in Markdown that is not really talked about or is even it's not even really documented, but through some heavy trial and error, I was able to code some things and build some things into the Markdown that really showcases the data in a way that I think is more palatable for any customer that wants to consume this information. So I just want to caveat that this workbook is built on Markdown. It's got a lot of really cool links and code and things that can be updated and that can be, managed and changed, right? So, first and foremost, this is kind of how we're thinking about a procedural flow. But some customers may have a different procedural flow, right? But around Azure Sentinel, we were thinking about, okay, how do we take the operations of security and within that SOC practice, and how do we snap that into the tool itself? What does that look like? And so thinking about that from triage, monitoring use cases, modeling those use cases, driving incident response and call outs, focused monitoring and incident summary, right? All of those areas to daily operations and shift schedules and staffing and training, to pulling in, process maturity, looking at documentation. You mentioned Agile, right? I've got a section in here around Agile methodology and how that's important, why that's important, looking at internal, informational metrics and analytic performance so that you really have a good view of whether or not the operations that you're snapping your processes, your people, and your business to are working. And that's critical to any operations, right? It's kind of that rinse and repeat. And so this is really what that procedural flow looks like. This is where my marketing team, as I was kind of working with them, were like, well, we need to call this SOC in a box. I thought, okay, sure, why not, whatever. So this kind of gets that SOC in a box feel, where those pieces fit within that purview and kind of have that feel. But all of the next pieces I'm going to show are really kind of fit within this overall, right? Whether it's on this side of the box or over here. And you'll kind of see what I mean here in a minute. The next, we have a few things, right? Places where they can put like contacts, pager duty, general IT, emergency, departmental, distribution lists, things that, an analyst may need to quickly pivot to go grab additional information if they're going to go do a crisis call out, if they need to reach out to an external team during that incident response process and workflow. So just a place where they can stub and keep some of that additional information. The process hierarchy, this really is a pyramid that fits within that box methodology. It is stacked on top of the analytical, the operational, the technological, and business processes itself. There's 14 processes, 36 procedures. They are integrated together based on the procedural flow that I showed you earlier to really give more visualization around how these pieces fit to build up that pyramid, right? As the bottom piece is kind of that compliance and metrics and that, disaster recovery, process improvement. On top of that is your SIM administration, your training, your daily operations, your config management, your design, your incident management, to get to that intrusion analysis, that incident management and reporting, and those analytic detections, right? That's at the top of that pyramid, at the top of that tier, without that foundational piece of how we want to orchestrate the the technology and the business side of it, we're not going to get to the analytical side. That comes later once we snap these other pieces in place. So just kind of a visual representation of that. One of the pieces here that I love that I've gotten a lot of acclaim around is roles and responsibilities. We took a lot of time, not only thinking about roles and responsibilities, but how do these roles fit within SOC operations? And what do they do? Right, so that you can come in here, an analyst kind of has an idea of what their role is. If they need a refresher, it's certainly here for them. But it's really good just to keep an idea for the overall business around each area of these roles, as well as a RACI matrix, a responsibility chart. Who's accountable to what piece of the operational practice within their business? And so I broke it down to that: watching, monitoring, investigation, assess and contain, remediate, recover, and postmortem. And then really thought through like where each of those roles are and how those roles fit into whether they're responsible, accountable, consulted, or informed. And you'll see that this is important because this is going to tie that back to service level objectives. When they need to meet the type of SLOs that they snapped to, who are they reaching out to? Who's receiving that notification? Who's being paged? Who's being called? What does that look like as we get into that incident response workflow? And that really takes us into the overall workflow. So I'm kind of a graphic snob. I like the way things look and feel. I like the way things flow. There's something about that brings me peace when I can see how things flow. And so from left to right, so we have these pieces here, and each of these go from this way and then this way, right? So watching and monitoring, taking a live stream, elevating that live stream to an analytic detection, looking at events of interest, moving those analytic detections over to an incident. And then once they're an incident and they've been onboarded, that incident can then be triaged. What is that triage procedure? And how does an analyst gather more information? What do they do to work to resolve that incident, right? How do they document it, update it, share knowledge, and close that incident? Or do they escalate? And what does that escalation process look like? What teams do they get involved? Do they have an incident response team that's onboarded? Do they have external teams that they need to notify that are tied to services that those external teams own and operate, that may have additional context that they need to pull in to make decisions around the type of data that they're seeing, events that they're triaging, and alerts that have fired within those incidents that they're scoping. So all of this really kind of helps build out that workflow from a high level perspective, so that there isn't anything left to guess. It really is flushed out. Now, is every customer going to snap to this type of agile methodology and workflow? Possibly not. They may have some additional procedures in place here. They may think about it a little differently. That's okay, because they may have a diagram similar to this. They could take this diagram, right, and they could replace the link in here with their incident response framework. Or they can snap to the one that we've built and how we're thinking about it around Sentinel. And this is more of that industry standard. It's more of that best practice that ties to common terminology, common nomenclature around those industry practices. And so they may have other language that they're using along the side here. They may have other languages that they're using for like their IR teams or even their analysts. That's okay. That's great. But we want to give them a framework that they can see and adapt and look at and go, yeah, you know what, we really are thinking about this the right way. And we really like this piece over here. We should incorporate that into the way that we're thinking about our incident response workflow.
Let me ask a question.
Yeah.
Let me ask a question. If a customer modifies this flow, will it affect the operation of the workbook?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Nope, not at all. This is more of giving them the type of a flow for them if they don't have a SOC, like, you know, that they need to adapt some type of a workflow, great. It's already here for them to adapt. But some customers that are more mature, they may already have this in place, but now they have a workbook that they can come and put that in, and they can train their analysts around.
Okay, great.
We step into incident response procedures. This is, again, more around industry standards. This is looking at an incident response decision matrix that looks at reconnaissance and attack delivery, host exploitation, binary, C2, local compromise, right? And then it's tying back to severities. Those severities we call out within tagging, and I'm going to give you an example of what that tagging might look like through the incident itself. Because we step through each of those different areas for an analyst to be able to understand not only the severity, but then we give them definitions and scope, and how to consider what that looks like, along with examples. So for severity 1 here, a critical compromise, major service disruption, or a publicly displayed attack. It's a mission critical system. Customers experience substantial loss of service or revenue, right? Potential regulatory fines, penalties, critical business impact, any of those type of things. Those are the questions that an analyst should be asking themselves as they're stepping in and doing those type of triage to consider the level of severity that they may be looking at. And that those decisions may come later in the incident response process itself, right? Because they may be in the gathering information phase, and that's perfectly acceptable. And they may be looking at escalating to an incident response team. They may be looking at bringing on external teams. All of that is perfectly respectable in the way that they should be thinking about driving to resolution for the incident that they're working. But anytime that they find evidence to these type of criticalities and these examples, they should be thinking about how to share that information back with those teams, and to consider the severity of what it is that they're looking at. So we want to call those out. We break out each of these areas: incident response methodology and watch and monitor, investigation phase, along with that initiating action. So again, we're getting back into that step 1. This is where we use the tagging, that annotation of tagging, bringing in the incident alert, and doing a critical call out, and then following the procedure that is snapped to that critical call out with a response time requirement, what that looks like. So this is also training material for the analyst. So anytime you bring on a new analyst, you can leverage this to say, okay, here's what your initiation of action is going to look like as you map to this incident triage process, as you're thinking about the criticality, you're thinking about these things, and we're giving you prescriptive actions to take. These are the considerations that you want to be leveraging before you step into things like escalation and bringing on external teams. But all of this is really called out for them so that it's not left to guesswork. And this is really the operational piece that so many customers have asked me for is, Rin, how do we operationalize this? How do we really make sense of the data that we're seeing, and the context around that data, the services and the logging and those things, right? Now, this is a framework. This is a starting place. And they may have additional context around internal apps they've built, their DevOps process, things that they're doing within services that are driving revenue. They may have that additional context. This is the place where they can go in and update this section of the workbook to add any additional incident information, add any additional, initiate action information, any service level objectives, if they want to change the severities or with the amount of time it takes to triage and to notify. This is really where they would do that. But we're giving them that framework to at least a place to start, right? Where Sev 1, all SOC analysts, IR team, SOC manager, director of IT security, and CISO, right? How should they do it? They should be looking at it through, and of course, I'm calling out teams. Teams phone, encrypted email, Teams war room. We now have a feature in Sentinel that gives customers the ability to click the action button and immediately create a war room within Teams and integrate that feature set between Sentinel and Teams together, and just spin that up so that it's protected within the grouping of those individuals who's going to work that incident. So a little bit of a call out there, because there are some of those integration features that we have, but they may have other areas or tools that they use. This is that place where they come in and make those changes.
So one thing that is a huge favorite or thing that Franklin loves is training, right? He believes that skilling up is the way that you build trust and you build continuing relationship and business with customers. So when you hit the word training, that SOC operational person, you hit upon how we do business in the SOC. But I noticed in your workbook, your very last tab within the main landing page of your workbook says SOC training, where you call out the SC200, all the learning modules, everything's in there, which is pretty cool. So right there at the very bottom.
Yeah.
And you can see at the bottom there, you can see where S200, all the stuff, and each one of those buttons on there or those badges are hot. So you can click on it and it'll take you to the link. Start out from everything from introduction to Sentinel to KQL. So really get call out where you're keeping that person within your workbook. They're doing their job, they're learning, and they're skilling up. So you got the combo, right? And you sized up with extra fries. So pretty good there.
I like that analogy. We did. We thought about that. We're like, okay, how do we size up? So I was part of the learning path team to build out the content for the SC200 for Sentinel. I helped build the questions and review the content, and I was very pleased once it came out, because I was like, yes, I can put this into Workbook. This is perfect timing.
Yeah. So open disclosure, one of your collaborators on that is the co-host of this podcast. You get two guesses, and I'm not one of them. So there you go. So yeah, we got some folks who love to do this type of stuff. So hey, not to disrail your line of thought. Go ahead and continue.
No, this wonderful segue. Absolutely wonderful. Honestly, between the training and the tools and resources too, I don't know if you've seen this area. These are all hot. These are all live. They've been vetted. They've been tested, and they're available for analysts to be able to use as technical resources and threat intelligence resources to do their job outside of tools and resources that are within the tool themselves. So as they do need additional resources, we thought about what that glossary or that table of contents might look like. And in V2, I've got a few more, favorites that are coming that we vetted that we'll be pushing into the workbook in a V2. But for now, this is our V1 list.
So let me ask the question. So when you guys go to V2, if I have this workbook in my environment, will I get the notice that there's a workbook upgrade and I can go ahead and do it then? Or will I have to download the JSON content and then update the workbook manually from your GitHub? I mean,
that's a great question. So we are partnering with the product group to pull this in and merge this in with the product itself. I'm working with them to make this applicable. For now, you can go pull it down from my GitHub while we're waiting for the product group to do this. Once it's there, then the product group will then make sure that it's every time I push new updates, it's then pushed into that version of GitHub and made applicable to the here, I'll click on this and show you. So inside here, instead of this showing customer defined workbook, it will actually have screenshots. I've already uploaded the screenshots. I've uploaded the stuff here, and it will become a managed right through GitHub. So all of our workbooks are actually through that process. Anytime a workbook is updated, it's updated through the GitHub process.
Very cool.
Hey, Edward, can you read the chat and Twitch there if there's any questions you want to bring up or comments?
Yeah, I actually turned that computer off on Twitch. It was making the echo. I need to log back in and do it then. I'll go back to Twitch.
We'll have Rod do it. Rod's been
Yeah,
too.
let Rod. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here. I can do something.
yeah.
Take a look at what Cyber Batgirl had to say.
Yeah, there's a few questions here, Ren, and I'm
Sure.
sure you can just jump into things because I absolutely want you to get to that spot where you show all the other goodness as part of this solution. This is not just a workbook, by the way. There's a lot more to it. So Cyber Batgirl is here. And she has some comments and also a couple questions. So the first item here is, this is great. One thing I see customers missing is that they get all this awesome technology, and as part of the process, they forget to interconnect some of the services. Do they have MDE, MDI, MDO, for example? Do they have connectors configured? Then have their processes been updated? So I have had customers that install MDE, but the process was never changed to use MDE for analysis and may still say something like using Symantec, so they do not update their configuration and day-to-day tool use because of what the process says. All right, so kind of take that under advisement. Last piece of this, so we can kind of show how this works. And then last, similar to what Ren said, now you're bringing new data that is being used differently with many teams, but the sharing is not taking place. For example, compliance, privacy, and other team involvement. So how would a security operations center, or how would they develop processes around being able to utilize this tool to kind of address those missing factors, those missing things?
Yeah, sure. So the way the workbook is broken down is just for that purpose. When we click on analytical, business, operational, technology, that's the foundation of not only the pyramid that I showed you within the box itself, it's the foundation of the workbook. So between analytical, business, operational, and technology is a table of contents with a bunch of sub pages for you to be able to update and build out and to continue to develop across those analytical processes. This is a starting place for each of those areas where we're calling out some of these things here, right? For intrusion, incident triage workflow, all right? But like, for instance, the configuration stuff, like under technology, we've given a place for architecture, data retention, network diagrams. You could add a place within this for configurations and be able to store those configurations and maybe even dates of when those last configurations were updated and maintained as part of that tabletop exercise, so that if you go through a tabletop exercise and you're looking at the way configurations are tied into your analytics, there's context around that. So this workbook is designed to be able to bring in additional data sets or additional procedures, operational, technological, business analytical, whatever, as the business sees fit, and configuration certainly falls into that area as well. So hopefully that answers the question. It's a place to start, but it can be grown, right? It can be matured and additional content added to the workbook.
Yeah, the one other person posted a question, and I'll respond the best Microsoft way possible. I already did, but do you know, working with the product group, when this will actually be available within Sentinel itself without having to jump out to your GitHub repo?
I push on them every day. Like, please go do the merge, right? I've got my pull requests out there. I've updated all of the artifacts and everything in there. It's just a matter of time. So I don't have an ETA, unfortunately, but
Okay.
I put feelers out there almost every day, reaching out to them saying, hey, when, can you guys push this? So they're aware of it, and I'm being a squeaky wheel.
Well, I'll help you, and I think Edward can as well, because this is important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is good stuff here. I mean, and you can tell I'm paying attention, because I'm actually, my attention span's like that of a goldfish, right? I am going down each one of these and being meticulous about looking what's in here. So much good material, right? And I call me greedy. I can't wait to version 2, even though I haven't cleaned my plate yet, and I'm asking for more food. Right? You can see all my analogies and metaphors around food. I'm a glutton, right? Oh man, when I see these things, part of being a fan of work is also being I won't say a critic, but a questioner of what is being presented. So let me ask you a question here.
Sure.
I have your workbook. I have it downloaded. I've gone ahead and made it part of my template and saved, and I can see it. But if a customer says, "Okay, I have it," where do I get started? Do I use this to build out a framework outside of Sentinel? Suppose I wanted to use this outside of Sentinel,
Hmm.
right? Can I apply this to uh, and integrate this into how I go about my soccer? Is this SIM independent of a source, right? Of agnostic of a SIM? Does it have value outside of Sentinel? I know what my answer is by looking at this stuff, but is that a reasonable request to say, can I take this and use this whether I want to run my own SOC, or if I'm using an external entity to manage my security alerting, monitoring, log aggregation, saying, how come you're not doing business like this? Right? Show me your process, and I'm gonna show you what I'm reading, and use this as a checklist of sorts. So I know that's a lot that I just put into the question. So I'll break it down to two things. Where do I get started to implement this? And can I use this sort of a checklist of sorts to either, if I'm going to build my own SOC, or I can use this to go monitor effectiveness of someone else that I've outsourced that to? Are those reasonable requests or
Those
use
those
cases?
are those are definitely reasonable requests. Let me start with by answering your second question, right? These are industry standards, best practices for SIM, but they've traversed across security products as a whole. This is the people and process side of the technology. It's how do I take a technology and snap process to it so an analyst knows what actions do I go take? What do I go do when I get a ticket or I get an incident or I get whatever you call it with that that fires within whatever product you're using. That's what this is doing, is it's operationalizing the actions an analyst takes based on the responsiveness of the tool, what the tool is giving them.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I've been asked to do, what a lot of folks have been asking me to do from even within Microsoft, and this is, I'll give you a sneak peek as to what V2 is going to look like, is, okay, Rin, this is fantastic. It's around Sentinel. This is great. So now as alerts are coming in from, say, third-party tooling or other first-party tooling, and an analyst needs to pivot outside of that tool, right, or outside of Sentinel to go into the incident response piece of, say, MDE or Security Center or MCAS, or I need to go dive into, dare I say, some of the third-party tools out there like CrowdStrike or Carbon Black, or I need to go look at Sentinel One, or I need to go dive into Okta, or I need to go do something that's happening or within my network peripherals, or even application services that I may be running within AWS or Google Cloud Platform, that Sentinel is monitoring. Right, what actions do I take when I step into that, and how do I triage those?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really what this is doing, is it's bringing unified effort across no matter where those tools and those peripherals live, so that an analyst knows what to do and what context to drive from the type of alerting that they're seeing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's your second question. Um, your first question, where do we start? Well, we start with the foundation. We start with analytical processes, business, operational, technology. We start with these three areas. These are the foundation of the rest of the pieces of the workbook. Starting with analytical processes and breaking down intrusion analysis, incident triage workflow, incident analysis, information fusion, onboarding, SOC use cases, doing some type of focused monitoring, or if I need to do host analysis and subtle event process, or data exploration within my tool, what do
Mm-hmm.
those look like as far as procedures and
Mm-hmm.
processes I need to follow? Starting there and crafting out how much of this can I consume already for my analysts, and well, how much of this do I need to change based on my current infrastructure and based on my current workflow today and within my tooling? What needs to evolve? What needs to adapt based on how I currently do things today? Or do I need to really look at it and be like, oh, you know what? This process and procedure and the way this is carved out really is maybe, more on the maturity side, and I need to shift the way I'm thinking of processes and the way that we're doing that narrative over to this type of methodology. So it's to get people to think about what they're thinking and looking at today, how these things are being executed within their environment today, and how to drive that. And so each of these are broken down with purpose, scope, and process. And then you see the subs. So you have your table of contents here, and this can grow. But under intrusion analysis, this is where we focus on this intrusion analysis. We have these subcategories or these procedures, right? And so what do those look like? So we break that down.
So that's why some of them are blue, because they're subs.
Correct.
Okay.
So the blue one is your high level. It's your process name, and then your white ones are your procedures that fit underneath that process name. So this maps back to the table. So when you click on this, each one's going to take you to a new page where you can then drill in to each of the different high level processes and the procedures that snap to those processes. So this is the place you want to start, is within these 4 areas.
Cool. Great. Any more questions coming across Twitch, Rod?
No more questions. We just answered. Well, I answered a couple things.
Okay.
Someone that's kind of new to Sentinel, and that's awesome.
Very cool. Very cool. Mr. Ray, continue, sir. My brain is just overloading. You can feel the knowledge spilling out onto the floor, right? This is good stuff, man. And let me go back to something. Maybe I heard you wrong. How many hours did you spend on this? 40, 50, 60, 70?
This took 4 months of development. I started end of December.
I never knew how much effort went into this, even though I know Clive, I know how much he loves making workbooks. And then TJ Bennett came on last week, I believe, and talked about his Zero Trust Tick workbook. And when he told me how many hours he put into that, it amazed me. Like, this is a second job.
Yeah.
Doing this, right? Okay. Wow.
Yeah, this was my stretch goal. This was really something that I felt passionate about, that I felt not only the industry needed, the product needed, and our customers needed. That this was something that could really elevate, the way our customers are thinking about leveraging Sentinel. And I felt that it was such a critical piece that was missing. Every time I'd have conversations, or I'd listen to you, Edward, or some of our peers right on our team, and I'd listen to those conversations, and I just would think, we've got a gap here. There's a concern here around the fact that the tool does these things, but no one understands how to actually do it, how to sit down and put it to paper, so to speak. So I really felt like it was time that we sat down and I did kind of a SOC dump from my brain. It was like, okay, over the years, I've pulled notes together, and I've helped build process, and I've helped do onboarding. And, as we were thinking about it, from Xbox to Microsoft Gaming to Windows devices to the hub, the plug into the CDOC. And it was like, let me go pull all of this knowledge and let me see if I can't put it into something that's going to be, that's going to resonate with the way that we think about that. And then, how can we drive this effectively around the tooling itself? Which I guess kind of leads me to this next section here. On the incident triage stuff, using like incident annotation stages by tags. This was an idea I got from ArcSight. On the ArcSight side, we would annotate stuff. They use cases, we use incidents. They don't use tagging, we use tagging. They use some other type of annotation. But the idea of the way we can elevate an incident just by adding additional metadata has always stuck with me. It's like, that's kind of important, especially if I'm an analyst and it's like, hey, I've seen this over here. Ooh, that might be important over there. Maybe I should let someone know about that. I can do that by adding a tag, right? Some type of metadata that says this is tied to a known, threat actor, or this is tied to this, or whatever the case may be. And so really kind of flushing out what those the triage stages look like. A lot of these are snapped to the way, closed false positive, remediated insufficient data, no risk. These are the way Sentinel is doing those closed things. So those are kind of snapping to that piece there. But then there's some additional tagging like under investigation, right? False positive, no further action, or this has been deemed actionable and it's open. And then what that needs to look like and how to go through that that triage process to give them a really good sense of ownership, sense of closure, sense of workflow as they step through each of these sections and dive into that before they're making decisions on escalation or crisis call out. It's really imperative that they kind of have a good understanding of what that might look like. And to that end, underneath that, the incident analysis, one of the things that we also did was we stepped through and built out questions. So we created it's a playbook, a logic app. And the logic app uses, it's called Get SOC Actions. I actually talk about it in my blog, right down here. So this Get SOC Actions, as well as the SOC RA watch list. These two things go hand in hand. And these pieces of content that we created ties back to this section of the incident analysis procedures, because one of the questions that I would often get from customers is, okay, you're giving me some remediation actions through like Defender for endpoints, or you're giving me some remediation actions or actions I should take through like Security Center, Azure Defender, which is great. And we can see that now in the incident or the timeline. Some of those pieces are starting to bubble up and make sense. But there's still a lot of things that I'm onboarding. I'm Mr. Customer. I'm onboarding these. And I have specific actions I want my analyst to take. How do I make that a reality for my analyst? Well, so we took that into consideration, and we basically built this wonderful playbook that ties back to this piece. And I'll actually kind of show you how we thought about that. So we have this watch list in here. And this watch list is SOC recommended actions. The alias, all you got to do is give it this alias. I don't care what the name you give it. The alias is SOC RA. The reason that we gave it that alias is because we've built several pieces of content off of that alias. It's basically a Custo query lookup from that alias to be able to go pull back data that a customer can put into that CSV based on actions. And the playbook then can run and deliver those recommended actions. So I'm just going to go click on an incident.
I'm glad you talked about that, because watch list is Frank's favorite feature in Azure Sentinel. I mean, he loves watch lists. And as soon as you finish that, put this in the back pocket to circle back around. How or have you considered tying your workbook into the one that's readily available called Security Operations Efficiency? Because what can be measured can be managed. Right now, your SOC manager is looking at, we give you all the tools to run it, and here's some framework. Now I'm looking at what if I'm looking at the workbook that says SOC efficiency, and now they go back and saying, okay, I'm using the SOC process, but I'm still seeing my incident from time to triage to close hasn't really improved.
Right.
We can figure that out after you talk about after you talk about notebook.
I think we went a little bit too fast here for people who are going to be watching this on video. Can you take the steps back through and show us what you did to get here? I think we missed some things.
Show a blank comment and then.
Sure. I'll actually delete the comment.
Yep.
So I came into the incident, right? And clicked on alerts. Or timeline. Either one works. You can click on timeline or alerts and click view playbooks. So this takes me into the playbook. And I know I want to run the Get SOC Actions playbook. So we'll run that. We'll refresh. And now there's the information. Okay. Now here's the cool part. So yes, there's a playbook that can run, that can go pull this information, but we've done one even better. So this one happens because this one is inside the SOC RA watch list. These steps are in there. And because they're in there, I can go click on the incident overview workbook right here. And inside the incident overview workbook, and this is also coming as an update for customers, remediations found. So this is a custo query that is pulled from the SOC RA watch list with those same exact remediation steps. So if they don't want to run the workbook or the playbook to have it pushed into the comments, they can actually go click on the workbook incident overview. And if it's been onboarded, they can see what those steps are directly from this workbook. It's all there for them. So we've integrated both.
So you can update the CSV file with the steps, and you're linking this based upon the incident type or alert type. How is this being linked? And can you update it for your own procedures other than your recommendations?
Yes, and yes. So it's tied to the alert display name. And that alert display name can be customized. It can be out of the box, or, and you can build steps towards the detection we give you out of the box, or it can be a detection that you create ad hoc. And then, but the steps for that, go update the CSV file, and then it, right, because they're linked together through that alert display name.
Are you doing anything, because it doesn't Defender for Endpoint automatically use something now for the display name for alerts? So when that's going to come across, do you have the recommendations for that? Do you have those alerts in a way that's easy for you to manage that coming from Defender for Endpoint?
Well, this is kind of what I was alluding to earlier. So this is where in the timeline under the under the preview, you can see where they're putting those remediation steps. This is where they're putting them. The product group is putting them here. But the remediation steps here and what steps that are in the SOC RA could be the same if that's what a customer wants to do, or they could be completely customizable or different depending on if the customer wants to take different actions based on business need. So that's the gap is, yeah, there are recommendations that we're giving as a company, but there may be additional actions that any SOC may want to take above and beyond those recommendations. And this is where they now have a framework that they can go and build those actions and have those actions applicable and available to any SOC analyst.
Are you going to look up? So this has been a common ask for a long time, dealing with playbooks and recommendations. Are you looking at setting up some sort of community SOC RA for the different scenarios? So as a team sport, we can share the recommendations across the board?
We could do that. I mean, I'm not opposed to that at all. I did want to show you one other thing, though. Take this one here. This is a custom rule. So the playbook is very intelligent. I want to show this so that viewers get an idea of why the playbook is very intelligent. If you have a detection that has not been onboarded to the SOC RA watch list, and you need to be able to have an analyst triage it, what does it do? Well, it actually pulls down the questions from the playbook, which is the intrusion analysis questions and the things that they need to consider in order to take the right actions within the incident response procedural processes. So it has a hook directly into the workbook to go pull those if it's not been onboarded. And this makes it really nice because now anytime I have something that's not been onboarded, or maybe something that I've got a SOC engineer that's overzealous and they're onboarding lots of detections, things are happening really fast and I'm kind of behind on how I want to leverage those type of SOC actions, I can make sure that this work or this playbook is intelligent enough that it's going to go grab the incident analysis procedure and it's going to go push that in here so that any analyst now understands what steps do I need to take. Well, I need to group them. I need to understand the attack. I need to analyze and assess the impact of the attack. I need to step through these additional sections here, determine what action is needed, and then follow my workflow procedures. Update, tag, close incidents, report the incident, alert events, bookmark, build and shift logs, escalate incidents to IR team, or use tagging in the incident, right? So again, it has all those hooks back to what those procedures are, those processes and procedures for the analyst. So it's intelligent in that way, whether it's in the SOC RA or it's not, the gap has been filled.
This is a lot, right? You can see me. I'm feverishly taking notes. I'm glad I can go back and watch. It just occurred to me I can go watch it on YouTube. Why am I taking notes? I can go do it, right? I don't want to forget what I want to focus on. So if I go back and watch the YouTube, it still won't remind me what I'm doing. But this is outstanding. I mean, I'm looking at your workbook. I'm looking at the incident overview workbook, the SOC efficiency workbook, and a few others. And when you pin these together, and then you have, actionable insights and intelligence around your playbooks, your watch list. I'm definitely going to go download those and put them in my lab too, right? Outstanding.
This is really why we built this as a whole package. We really felt like it needed to be not just the workbook, but it needed to be additional components to the workbook to drive the right actions and that fit to those processes and procedures. So now they actually can see how it works, right? It's like, oh, okay, yeah, the playbook and the SOC RA and the incident overview, all of those pieces fit into the overview and the way that we're thinking about the SOP for SOC operations. When you bring those pieces together, this becomes a very, very powerful package. Packaged content around operationalizing our tool sets that I think can differentiate ourselves within Azure Sentinel and differentiate ourselves in the way that we're thinking about, incident response all up. So great call out. Thank you, Edward.
Yeah, great stuff. I mean, it's so much in here that, there are at least two or three things inside the Sentinel features of functionality that you could become an SME on and then career out of. Like, I'm still weak in notebooks, right? But you come from that heavier Linux and Python background than I did. I was more of a networking guy. And so I'm looking at things and I'm sort of putting the stitching together like I'm building a sock right now. So I'm going to add this in here. I'm going to put this in here. And I would ask one more question.
Absolutely.
What if I'm an MSSP and I'm building this out? Are there any considerations that I need to make sure I take note of, especially when I have to lighthouse someone else's environment to be able to have delegated access? Is there anything special I have to do? Or just the fact that if I'm going to help manage someone's thing, Lighthouse is stood up, can this can this workbook be extended out via a Lighthouse managed tenant to tenant MSSP? Or huge companies are doing this. You've seen that where internal groups are acting as the MSSP to the larger business units, right? Because these business units want to pay for their own log aggregation. Like, no, this is not coming out of my pool of money because operations wants to dump all the stuff in the LAW. We don't want to pay for that. We want alerts, not traffic, right? All these events and stuff can go to another LAW, ADX, blah, whatever. Is there any special consideration, or is that a topic for another podcast we can get you back on to talk about? How do I extend this out to that model?
The high level answer is yes. Really, where the workbook is concerned, and just thinking about the framework as a whole, it comes down to the framework itself, this piece from an MSSP level. So you may have And this is where it's kind of interesting that you bring this question up. I've had this question from Mark Simos. I don't know if you know Mark Simos. Shout out to Mark. He's
Oh yeah.
an absolute fantastic guy, and he's actually helping me right now land this on a several different public facing places that are shortly to come, right? Which will also snap back to kind of our V2 time. But we're thinking about kind of CAF, and we're thinking about docs.microsoft.com. We're thinking about some other places, but V2 is going to have some of those MSSP capabilities where it's like, okay, if you're a standard SOC, maybe a standard business, and you're just doing it for your all up business, great. This model works fantastic. But if you're an MSSP, then you got to think about, okay, well, it's hierarchical. I may have my tier 1, tier 2 outsourced, and I may have an MSSP focused on that, but my local business may be doing the escalations. So I may have my outsourced SOC escalating to my business team, and then my business team may be escalating to my external teams where applicable, right? Where they may have services or service owners and application owners and business owners that are going to have more context. And so that triage might look like that, or that workflow might look like that, where it's MSSP down to the business down to, and so that this diagram would take on a little different frame of mind, incorporating into an MSSP. We've talked about that is definitely on where I'd like to go. This model can certainly be adapted in that way. Again, any of these links and these images I have in here are subject to be changed by any customer who wants to come in and say, okay, well, we're doing it this way, and this is kind of what we've already built, and here are Visios, and great, this is where we're going to store that information, and then you can update those links. But great question. Certainly is definitely where we're headed. Yes, it can do it. The framework isn't going to change that much. It's just all about where does the MSSP sit in the framework, irrespective to the business people, and who takes on those processes, where are those roles and responsibilities, who's accountable, who's responsible, and thinking about it from that level, right? That's where the differentiation is going to be when you bring in an MSSP.
Okay.
Can you show? Go ahead. Sorry, Edward. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead, Franklin.
So I had a question in the chat. Can you show us how easy it is to actually edit the workbook?
Absolutely. Yep. So each of these sections come with an edit button, right? So we'll just take. I'll show you kind of. You can even add additional buttons. So this is links, and you can see how the links are broken down by tabs, link text, with the settings for those. This is a primary button because they're blue. If they're a secondary button, then they'll be white. And then you can just click updates after you've updated them. So it's a matter of just coming in here, scrolling down to the bottom. You can see there's an open space here where I could set something in. And then if it needs to sit in between these other buttons, I use the up or down arrows, and I can just push that button up or down wherever I want it to go there. On the page itself, let's take this page for instance. Again, this is Markdown. So 2 pounds is going to be a larger text. 3 pounds is going to be still large, but a little bit smaller. So kind of a sub. Think about it from like, you're creating a Word doc, and you want it to be higher or lower, and then you're creating your bullets, so dashes. And then the table is really kind of a fun format. This took me a little bit to kind of figure out how to do. Again, this really isn't talked a lot about or documented very well, but if you follow this real quick, it's really pretty simple. It's just pipe delineated with a colon in between. This is setting up the table. You may have a hierarchical, right, or a header up here, and then down below you're snapping all of the columns into each of these different areas here. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, right, which snap to that, and that's kind of how the table format works. And the images are really, really easy. This is interesting. There's 2 ways Markdown does images. You can store an image with an image name, Or if you don't want to put anything inside the square brackets, like you can just leave it like this. But images require the bang. So if you don't have the bang in front of it, then Markdown won't display it as an image. It'll display it as a link. So making sure that you remember to put the bang in front of it, put any name that you want inside the square brackets. If you do want to give it an additional context, you can wrap it in quotes after the link itself. So that's pretty much how images are displayed, and you can kind of see where that image is displayed within the GitHub. So it's all tied back to that repository, so that they're all accessible for the workbook. But that's pretty much it, and it's pretty simple to do that. And if you want, you can step into an advanced editor directly in here, for this Markdown. And then the awesome thing is I can click preview after I'm done testing my Markdown, and I can see what my preview looks like. And if I need to make any changes, I can then come back to my Markdown and make any changes.
Wow. Well, this has been extremely informative. We're not definitely rushing anybody off the show. This is Wednesday night. This night I have to cook, right? So I better go get dinner.
Rod's been still too quiet. So Rod,
I know.
Anything from Rod here about this?
So, no, not really. The only thing, so there is a lot of click around, because a lot of SOCs, of course, once they get their procedures in place, they're going to want to automate it even further. The only thing I would mention is, Rand, you can talk about automation rules, how to apply these things a little bit more automatic for the descriptive remediations. Also, Markdown also supports a subset of HTML, so you can actually use an image tag. So
yeah, so I'll actually kind of show you what that looks like real quick. So if you click on, I'm trying to remember which one it is. So analytical, and so let's scroll down to my analytical piece right here, and then go to SOC use cases. So under here, you can see I have like some really cool color code for onboarding key analytics. This is a table for, anybody who wants to onboard detections and keep a running tab of what's been onboarded, what's been put into hold, what's in dev, what's in test, what's in prod, and then color coding them and then snapping them through like to a table. So when you come in and you look at the way that table is broken down, where did it go? There it is. So, okay. Yep, click at it. All right, so when we kind of get down into that, you can kind of see right here, like P-style background color, Dodge blue. So I'm actually color coding the text inside the table. So I'm using, again, simple table format with a background style using like tomato for hold with a description on that. But you can come in here and make any changes that you want, change the color, from orange or light gray or medium green or Dodger blue or whatever you want to use. But everything's transparent. It's all here for you to be able to customize, change, and mock up however you see fit for your business.
Well,
that was one of the real quick, Edward. Sorry, that was one of the coolest things learning was that Markdown supported HTML, and that I could come in and add a lot of different HTML styles in here. So I kind of took advantage of that.
So there is one more question or potential recommendation in the chat. It's Cyberbat Girl is still here. SOC teams may be required to provide monthly or quarterly reports or recommendations about the findings. Is there anything on the roadmap for helping surface the lessons learned from past events to enable continued improvements? And that is a good one, because our SOC operations efficiency doesn't include lessons learned. It just shows mean time for closing investigations. Right.
So the workbook does cover that. Let's see here. It is, I'm trying to remember, under business. So process improvement and process maturity, as well as documentation standards. We do talk about performing assessments, appraisal method. It's leveraging the Carnegie Mellon Software Engineering Institute's capability maturity model, or CMM, right, for SOC operations. So it talks about the planning and preparation on-site phase, right, reporting phase, and what that might look like. I do also give you an example of, where did I've got to, let's see, under the operational side, weekly threat intelligence reports, and kind of giving you an example of like security threat intel, key articles of interest, right, what that might look like from a threat intelligence report. You could add some additional stuff in here as well. And then there was my shift log management of how to document. So this is an example of right, the post-mortem, the lessons learned, or what's been gathered so far within that shift log. So storing all of that here. So kind of giving an example around this particular incident, the entities, the incident link, the notes and actions, things learned, right? All of that stuff can be stored here as well. In this particular example, I'm just leveraging OneNote, right? Because we're pretty heavy on, on internal Microsoft, and the way that we're thinking about that, we leverage OneNote to kind of store, things that, we're trying to drive towards and share information. It makes it easy to do that kind of thing. So this is just kind of an example of what that might look like.
And if you actually have to pull together a war room, a lot of this content and narrative could also be captured in Teams with that functionality that's in there also. Yeah. Yep. You can just cut it out of Teams, and that way you'll have it, right? Because the owner of that team, unless you have some type of archive, is the only person that can delete that content. I believe that's correct.
Yeah, for the SOC war room here, it's calling out like the Teams piece and the crisis response and what that might look like for crisis remediation. So there's even examples on what that might look like.
Yep. Man, it's good stuff. Well, I don't have any other questions. Ren, Franklin, do you have any questions?
I am all good. It's just so much to think about. I mean, this could be a book on its own that you could buy at the store. A course of its own too, about the overall procedural side.
Well, I'll wait for the movie. I'll play Ren in the movie. You could tell people that work hard, Ren, because we don't have any hair. You don't have any hair, Rod.
I know, right?
Franklin has a head full of hair. He's not stressed out about anything, right? So for us real workers, we've worked our hair out of our head.
It's a wig.
And we definitely would love for you to come back on, especially when V2 comes out, right? To show us, hey, V1, V2, and make some announcements. Leave us, in anticipation, because we don't know two things. We don't know when V2 is coming out, and then we don't know when it's going to be automatically pulled by the engineering or product group, so that it populates as a workbook inside someone's subscription, rather than what I had to do. I had to copy it down and put it in there. That's all I have, man.
And Edward, we did get one question. I'd like to see a better look at some from Cyber Batgirl. Can we get a better look at the Batmobile?
Well, Batmobile's right there, and the Batwing is sitting right next to me. So,
okay.
We do have one more question. I absolutely have to jump off. You guys can stay as long as you want. Let me ask this one last question.
You can see the Batwing.
So Ren, outside of Sentinel, if you had to deploy one of these four tools,
we were going to stop this.
No, we weren't. You don't get to, just because you lose and I won last one, Jared. Hey, if you can't deploy Sentinel, which of the four products would you then deploy? Right, you can get
first. And or what order?
In what?
Yeah.
Okay.
MDE, MDO, MDI, or MCAS. You can't use Sentinel now because and that's not even take Sentinel into consideration whether it's deployed into the customer environment or not. You get one of those four. Which one would you go first? Or if I want to make it, which is, well, I'm not going to say what's your favorite because there may be some engineering people on the call like, oh, Ren loves that better than my product.
So
MCAS.
my answer might actually surprise you, and I'll explain why I'm going to give you the answer I'm going to give you.
Okay, go ahead.
So the answer is that it depends on the workload. It depends on what services, where they're running, and what is generating revenue for the business.
That's cheating. You have to choose one.
No, it's not cheating because this is how we did it for Xbox. So think about it this way. We had 450 services, across a wide range of infrastructure, and we had to onboard them. So we had to think about like who's generating money, who's delivering this, how are those services communicating to each other, where do those services live? Do they live on-prem? Are they in the cloud? Are they serviced through like autopilot? What does that look like? And so we had to ask ourselves, what does our onboarding practice look like as we're onboarding services to these tool sets, and what's important? How do we protect them around controls, around operational procedures, around SOC actions? I think very much in those terms. And so my answer is probably going to surprise you in the fact that that's how I think. I don't think about do I want to list these tools out and just go pick the tool? No, I'm thinking about it from the business side and where is my revenue? Where is my risk? And then I'm going to go apply the right tool to satisfy that risk.
So what's the right tool? MDO, MDI, MDE, or MCAS? I'll let you choose the business.
So if I was application based, and my revenue was through applications, I might go do MCAS. If I was, server side, right, or in services within servers, I may go deploy, Azure for server or MDE, depending on where the.
All right, let's say you're a business with 200 desktops, and you have Azure Active Directory and you have on-prem Active Directory domain services, and your M365 E5, which one would you do first?
Well, if I was desktops, I would certainly do MDE first.
Your Honor, he's leading the witness.
Right.
Leading the witness here.
Totally, Frank. You took me down the primrose path there.
So guys, thanks so much, Ren. Thank you. I'll